Taylor Swift, don't laugh at me. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Many narcissists have no sense of humour whatsoever. Some narcissists have exceptional senses of humour, your glorious narrator being one. The humour that I utilise is just another means of the pursuit of the prime aims. I use humour as a means of controlling people, drawing a response from them which provides fuel. It may also lead me to particular residual benefits as well. Narcissists, however, want you to laugh with them, but narcissists do not like to be laughed at. Not for them self-deprecation. You laugh at a lesser narcissist, you'll be met, most likely, with a physical assault, as there is an immediate ignition of fury which causes them to lash out at you, to stop you laughing at them. You laughing at what they've done, mocking them, deriding them, humiliates. The suggestion that that lesser is the butt of a joke will not be well received. Midrange narcissists are likely to turn on the waterworks, give you a verbal dressing down, run away from being derided in this fashion, complaining to those who listen about the harshness of it all. They'll particularly play the victim. Why are they always picking on me? Haters are always going to hate, I guess. They don't like to be laughed at, because once again, it threatens that sense of control, and mid-rangers invariably take themselves seriously. They believe themselves to be more important than they actually are. Those of middle mid-range status and upper mid-range that hold positions of authority believe those positions entitle them to respect and certain appropriate behaviours, and therefore to ridicule, mock, and laugh at them threatens that sense of status, and of course therefore threatens that need for control. Lacking a sense of humour, they are unable to accept that they're being laughed at, and invariably will turn out with a pity play. They will lash out at the individual, usually verbally, and often retreat and go and complain elsewhere, smearing the person that was laughing at them. They just don't get it. That's why you see repeatedly the responses of this one's wife and Jada Pinkett Smith when they have been mocked and ridiculed. It does not go down well with them at all. They can't laugh at themselves. They're completely unable to do so. But what about when it comes to a greater narcissist that's laughed at? Well, a greater narcissist still doesn't like it, but invariably will manage it in a more effective way. In some instances, the greater narcissist will just respond with their own pithy put-down, fighting back, and thus, where they're laughed at, they turn the tables. A particularly charismatic greater is able to do this. Thus, the threat to control that was posed by somebody taking the piss out of them is nullified, and they humiliate their mocker. Of course, there are some instances where that can't be done, where the greater is without the capacity in the moment to respond. It's one thing across the dinner table for someone to try and make a joke at the greater's expense. In such circumstances, the greater may well, utilising their intelligence, charisma, and wit, fire something back and nullify the threat to control that way. In other instances, the greater will suck it up. They may well laugh along as well, although you'll see that the eyes denote no humour whatsoever, as they make a mental note to get the offender later. And it is that second response which has been witnessed with regard to Taylor Swift. She attended the Golden Globes, and a joke was made about her at her expense. Red State, through Brandon Morse, reports the Golden Globes might have seen an uptick in viewership, but many who watched it say it was a mess of rich celebrities cultivating cringe moments, as many celebrity award shows are. No surprise that Red State doesn't really like these events. It continues by explaining that one moment in particular featured comedian and host Joe Coe making what could be considered a very mild swipe at the NFL's obsession with Taylor Swift. Swift was in the room, having been nominated for cinematic and box office achievement in motion picture for her concept documentary movie, Taylor Swift, The Eras Tour. Coy's joke was hardly offensive. He noted that the Golden Globes was coming on after an NFL doubleheader. He said, "The big difference between the Golden Globes and the NFL is that at the Golden Globes we have fewer camera shots of Taylor Swift." It's hardly offensive and is a mild Mickey take of the level of exposure that she has been enjoying at NFL games when she's been attending to watch her boyfriend Travis Kelce. Once this remark was made, the camera immediately cut to Swift, who looked annoyed and took a sip of her champagne. Thus, that was her reaction. Now, her reaction didn't impress certain people. One individual was Megyn Kelly, who was speaking with Maureen Callahan about the moment, and Kelly chided Swift for her lack of a sense of humour in a harmless joke that wasn't even directed at her per se. "Can't she just show that she's a good sport? I think she made the wrong move," said Kelly. I thought, wow, if we needed any further proof that she has no sense of humour about herself, and this will be a revenge song, or whatever her next magnum opus is, said Callahan. Callahan noted the lack of appreciation from these multimillionaire celebrities who take themselves so seriously, despite all the blessings they have. Kelly elaborated that Swift isn't in charge of the number of times the NFL broadcasters choose to put Swift on people's screens. If she was smart, she would laugh like she was in on the joke, said Kelly. Callahan speculated that perhaps Swift's continued celebration in our culture has made her feel above light swipes by comedians. Well, it's not actually that. The fact that the comedian was making fun at her expense and suggesting that she was overexposed, even though, of course, as rightly pointed out, she has no control over the NFL cameramen, broadcasters. The fact is that there was a joke being told at her expense which was suggesting that she was overexposed, and in the circumstances, that is a threat to her control. She was not in a position to just laugh along with it, and we saw a momentary fracture in her facade. In the video footage, you see her looking, she doesn't so much look annoyed, but looks unimpressed by the comment, staring straight ahead and just takes a sip of her champagne. Inside, the fury will be fighting for freedom. It will have been ignited, but of course as a greater, she has a significantly high level of control over it, with the consequence that she's not going to flip the table and then stand on a chair and say, "Come on, all of you motherfuckers! You think I'm overexposed? Well, watch this!" Naturally, the control that she has over her ignited fury is so superior, it's not going to let that happen, and thus she didn't behave in that way. Of course, her facade wasn't able to cause her to smile, even giving a response where you could see that it was a wafer-thin smile, with the eyes denoting a lack of humour about the situation. Instead, all the facade could manage was to keep that ignited fury under control so she didn't flip out, but didn't provide her with any kind of response which would show that she could appreciate the joke being made at her expense. Because quite simply, she doesn't, and the facade was too busy keeping the ignited fury under control to have enough energy, if you will, to make her seem like she didn't mind the joke. In the circumstances, she wasn't in a position to nullify the threat of control head-on by shouting back some kind of witty heckle to the comedian. She didn't turn to somebody beside her and make a comment about it, which was a potential option. Instead, she'll have just jettisoned the threat in her mind by simply thinking, "I'm the billionaire singer Taylor Swift. You're a no-mark comedian who's died on his arse tonight, and here you are making jokes at my expense. I'm better than you fuckwit. and thus she'll have thought in such terms, staying in a position of withdrawal from the individual to nullify that threat of control. Of course, the problem that manifests is that has been identified by Megyn Kelly, that it demonstrates that she's got no sense of humour when it comes to herself. And the fact is that she will have been thinking about how she could get that comedian back. She'll park the response, but make mental note to self to somehow get him back. And she will. It might be done publicly, it might be done privately, but that's the way of the greater. You're not allowed to laugh at her. She's more important. Laughing at her threatens her need for control. And thus her narcissism in this instant ignited her fury, but the facade management kept it under control to the extent that she didn't disgrace herself in the manner as I suggested she could have done. But it wasn't able to cause her to laugh along with it and at least give the appearance of being able to take a joke. Thus, that caused a separate issue for her. But her narcissism enabled her to deal with the threat there and then by staying in a position of withdrawal and jettisoning it. But it will also have caused her to make a mental note to get even with this comedian at a later date, something we've seen Taylor Swift do repeatedly in relation to her exes through her music. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.